plot is to prevent, say, an uprising that can lead to revolution. And then in a fraction of time, the whole system collapses.
It must be a fragile system if it can be broken by just a few days.
Yes, it is indeed.
No more lies. Only truth.
Basically, it's a high-efficiency filter and heat exchange system. Perspiration passes through the first layer and is gathered in the second, where salt is separated. Breathing and walking provide the pumping action.
Control you.
Reaction starts, it'll spread to all the turbinium in the planet. Mars will go into global meltdown. That's why the aliens never turned it on.
Clearface versus Vastface and the full understanding of where the one meets the zero and exactly where the end of this and beginning of this cycle is and how that all connects and creates this circle of time or this cable or cobble. The announcement about the new network are basically, I'm working on building a new network with a really good friend of mine who I'm actually going to be on the show with, I think it's June 14th or something around there. You'll see a flyer on it. Make sure this is on. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be designing a network, and we're going to put in all of the stuff that that's really necessary to bring consciousness in a very acute way, to cut down time, to cut down confusion. This is a big thing for me because for everyone that does know me, this has been 6 years, really 6 years tight in bringing consciousness every day. And it doesn't stop, and it is also increasing. Things are picking up, and there's a lot of people that I'm linking with on a consistent basis. And we're also developing something so that everyone can, how can I put it, that I don't want people to have to depend on me in order to get a response or in order to get what they need or to get an answer to a question or something of this nature, because that only shows the weakness within the wheel if it has to depend on just one component. Everyone should be depending on each other. And this brings me to a major point in my spiritual expansion, because obviously I have to work more integrally with groups and different people, especially on the physical level. But I definitely am not going to recant all of my work that I've done on the internet and in the virtual world, and obviously all those that are connected to me that way. And so what I feel like is that it's just a simple switch for me for a moment to put a lot of my time and my attention I put a lot of my time and my attention into actually building something that has the ability to accomplish these desires without having any issues building it, meaning that what you see me doing now with explaining to you spirituality, I can really do that with anything. So if I put my mind on to, okay, well, let's create open source spirituality, let's create a sustainable network of expansion of consciousness, then that's just something I need to focus on. But everyone also has to realize as you gain this omniscient power, etc., it still requires your focus to put your energy into something. And so when you do put your energy into something, you cannot also neglect that your energy is not focused on other things, even though you may think that you're handling it well. Meaning that most people, when trying to multitask but doing something also primarily, will tell themselves, oh, but yeah, you're handling that, it's okay. But when you look at physics and you look at all the levels of energy, et cetera, it tells you if you focus directly on something, then everything else is actually going to, quote unquote, receive less energy or suffer for that, okay? And this gets us into also the Clearface, Vastface consciousness, because it is an upgrade. It's the ability to work in both realms, alpha, beta, simultaneously, and to be able to do that with the equilibrium or a balanced level of energy. And it's quite a task. It's almost like a tightrope act with no net below you, but it has been accomplished and can be accomplished on a consistent basis, especially the more that we perfect ourselves in the ability to do that. So I did want to let everyone know that basically I'm going to be developing a new network. You can also see me here in this top corner over here. I got a little window so you can also see what I'm working on here on the laptop. But new network's going to be built, and that network is going to actually allow us to plug in a lot of things like the rating system that we were talking about. It's going to allow us to be able to have a much more cleaner platform, also a platform that allows us to display the top articles and top things that we come across. So it's just a lot of things, even to the point where we'll probably be streaming the show directly from the platform rather than pulling everyone out of their platform or whatever they're doing and putting them into live stream, meaning that you should be able to just the show pop up on the page and there it is for you. So those are the kind of things that we'll be integrating. Before then, if you really want to know about, I would say 20% of what I have access to has been revealed or put out into the network over the last 2 years. And this is not because I haven't been wanting to give that information to everyone. It's just that that information is very unorganized. And this means that files are still 10 string numbers and pictures are mixed in and not categorized. And this kind of effort, this kind of thing is going on, and it takes a major effort to actually sort that information. So what I've been looking into personally, is that I've been looking into how to develop an open source platform that allows individuals that are approved in intent for this project to begin to sift through the information and begin to file it properly and make it available for other individuals that are needing to access that information to be able to get it and to utilize it and to search through it. And I finally came across some software, thanks to another friend that I was speaking with named Patrick, called DevonThink. And that software, for those who want to write it down, because obviously it's DIY enlightenment, it allows you to categorize very large databases, meaning like when you have at least 10 to 20,000 files, is what we're talking about, really nothing like 100, 200 files that you can do on your own. But when you get into 5,000, 6,000 files of just one type of particular content, and then also, content is being developed daily, so you're bringing new stuff in, and then, it's not that many people filing it. You can end up with a mess at a certain point. So then what happens is that we're not able to, in every tense, get to you the specific information related to what is being discussed. Because I still have a vision for AstroQuest that I can be here talking, and then another person could be in this database that's fully sorted and on the fly pulling up things that I'm actually talking about. And because I'm aware of all the files that are there mentally, then I can say, this picture, this picture, this picture, and I can even do it here from my platform. In fact, the computer that I have here is where the database would run from. And so all I would do is just type in what I'm looking for, like if I'm trying to show how the 7-pointed star connects to Mayers, who are the elven kings that are supplying the cargo to the entire planet from as long as you can remember. I could just pull that up really briefly and show that through a system that is just as simple as my Finder, meaning this thing here over in the corner, not so much as me having to go and Google and things like that. So this is would be a major improvement to how we're bringing consciousness, and it allows us to keep streamlining things, because now that I'm continuously expanding, I'm continuously expanding, and this has also brought me into different spaces of my consciousness to understand what I need to do fully to sustain the planet. And this is in the universe. And this is every stage of consciousness that I grow into as my magnetic field is becoming larger, as I begin to rework my own programming for the total realization that all is self. And I'll explain that reworking the programming here now. Reworking the programming is hinged on some very key things, and it's about basically what is an illusion, like what is illusionary and what is real. And this is the duality in every tense, because it introduces two antitheses, or one that is opposed to the other. And so you should always see those kind of choices as zeros and ones. And you must gain the ability, or get an opportunity to gain the ability, to put those two together, to merge those two, and thus collapse what would normally be a disconnection between two characters that I'm calling Clearface and Vastface, or limited and limitless. But also realizing each of them in their highest state, meaning that someone who wants to get data and someone who is about science is a Setian, okay? And that's why they call it Project SETI, collecting data. And let me explain why. Because in ancient Egyptian times and the Kemetan times, all this stuff was zoomorphied, and there were different codes to the doctrine. But it talked about how one being, who was known as a Setian, had this immense stage of wanting to understand things only from the mental side of themselves, okay? And this means that an illusion must be created, because you cannot collect the data on something, read about something, but yet not experience it, and then think that you have even come close to what it really is, okay? And this is a big thing, because in my experiences in life, if people want to know, well, what put you to this point, or what got you to the point where you're studying this kind of information, or actually able to bring forward this kind of information, and it's more of the experience than the study, because had I not had the experience, then everything that I'm reading, I can only really take at face value. I can't actually even connect it, and I can't even connect if the person that's writing it or telling it to me has some kind of similarities to my life or what I've experienced, etc. So there's a lot more integral work that must be done when a person goes into experience, okay? But this means a lot, though, because you have to realize that this reality, which has become illusionary, it's important for us to realize that what we think things are, that's what they become. But if we start living into something that's false and fake, meaning we just start gathering a bunch of data like history and science all in books, and then we have these kids in these classes and they're reading this book about this person who did this or this element that does that, but they're not actually taking them into the experience of it. And that's why when you get into higher courses of anything, it always entails the experience, right? Like the last thing in chemistry they make you do is finally dissect a frog. You get a chance to actually be there on it, right? So this is a method and a way of teaching that is very prevalent in the sense of which one really gives the individual to the ability to carry out what they need to carry out, or which one just gives the individual an idea and a thought that they would be able to carry it out. And this is what I started noticing, especially with the modern universities, that much of the knowledge that is given is actually in the classroom. It's not in the field. It's with the data and all the books and things of that nature. And then we find later on, when the person goes into their job position, that first of all, they have a lot of knowledge that will never be used in that position. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the person that has all the experience, the one who's worked on the equipment and may not even have gone to college, but has worked on the equipment all their life, has worked on the equipment all their life, We'll have more of an ability to be able to do things in the position, and sometimes is actually above the person who has got all this knowledge. So what I'm telling you is that experience will fare better all the time than knowledge. And so it's important for people to realize the difference between the two, and then where you can start getting into more of the experience of what this spirituality is really about. Because when you sit back and think about things after the experience, your entire level of consciousness and what you think things really mean changes, okay? And so that is somewhat of the disclaimer then, meeting the 0 to the 1 and understanding where you're at in all of this. The first thing that I really want people to know is the power of encouraging yourself, because this is also a very important thing in regards to the world that we're living in, where people are more likely to point out your faults than they are your things that you do right. So what I'm saying is that you have enough people, and let me just make sure that I'm coming through here. Okay. We have enough people always telling you, oh, you didn't do that right. Oh, did you take a shower? Oh, you need to fix yourself. Oh, you need to cut your hair. Oh, did you actually get the stuff out of the store? Oh, look at you. You dropped that. You're so clumsy. You need to think more vast. So look at the input that generally everyone gives to the other person. But when you see someone doing something that is let's say what you call what they're supposed to do, like in this case with children, they make up their bed. You may not say, hey, great, I'm glad you made up your bed today. Or when you see them wash the dish, you may not say, hey, I'm glad that you're cleaning up after yourself. It's more of when they don't clean up after themselves or when they don't make their bed, that's when you say, hey, you need to make your bed and you need to not do that. So what I'm saying is that you have enough people around you discouraging you. So you have to be that perpetual energy of encouragement to yourself. And don't let the accuser in your mind play the game and let you imagine that that is your ego. Because there's another thing that happens when you go to say, hey, I'm really glad that you're expanding and, you know, it's great to see you do your thing. Go ahead, do your thing. And then someone says, look at that. That's ego, man. How are you telling yourself to do your own thing, man? And blah, blah, blah. See, but that's still that same individual, same frequency that always tells you that everything is this and down and down and down. So just remember, encourage yourself. Tell yourself how expanded you're getting in this, because you really are. Like if even you're at the point of looking at this information, it's already telling you a lot about yourself and what you truly aspire to be. And so you're on your way to something that it's magnetically charged. So that means that it's pulling you to it. So there doesn't have to be as much effort in trying so hard to reach it. And this is what people need to realize too, is that in the stillness of your mind, not in the chaos, not in the, oh my goodness, I got to do this. Oh my goodness, we're running out of time. What time? Like realistically, today you'll realize what time really is, what everything really is within these realities, and how you're even beyond that already. And that brings us to the first point. The false idea of separation, okay? And this is a very interesting thing because I came across it about a week and a half ago where a big decision was being required for me to make in regards to affiliations. And I had somewhat of a conflict of interest only because of how many numbers were involved with the awakening, meaning that affiliation would maybe offer the potential to awaken hundreds of thousands of people more in a shorter period of time if that affiliation could take place. But I was also uncomfortable with the affiliation because that affiliations was tied into things in the past that we still haven't received any transparency on, meaning that the individuals that are involved in that faction haven't been transparent about their inner workings on the planet. And so what it brought me to is this conflictive moment inside where I was telling myself, well, you got to think about it, like in the time in which the earth needs to receive its emancipation versus, you know, how much it's burning its resources. If you don't make another kind of move very rapidly and start considering maybe you should put aside your differences in order to get some change going on, that could maybe be your fault. So that was one side of my mind. I call that Vastface, because Vastface has all this data. And Vastface attempts to logically compute every single thing that's going on around based on time, right? While Clearface, which is another state of the consciousness, always just very softly says something like, hey, we're always together. There's nothing that can stop that. Not even anything. In fact, Vastface just tunes out because Vastface is not into the game. Vastface has already graduated the game, understands everything about it, and just understands the cream of the game, the actual symbol itself of the entire game and what it looks like, and it always sums it up to that. That realize that if you're working out here to try to bring everyone together, still remember that everyone is already together, that's not something that can be changed. It is a biological, a biodynamic, electrical, bioelectrical. There are several different tendrils. There are biorhythms. A lot of this is just all bio stuff because you're in a biosphere. So as long as everyone is in the bubble together, then we're all collected still. The case is, how much space do we have in between each other? Because that's what creates time. Time is space, okay? That's the distance between one object and another. So what is the distance between a person's state of consciousness of realizing that all is self versus the individual realizing that they're in division, okay? And so this is their own path, their own mission, their own drama, okay? But that is all encompassed in a bubble that everything remains together. So if you grow from the state of consciousness of always just being inside of the dualistic divided body, and then at this action of actually thinking you're bringing things together or separating things, you still need to correct yourself and remember that everything is already together. So when you question yourself about your affiliations is what I'm saying. And if you need to make greater efforts to actually connect people together, even if it means compromising somewhat of what you believe, don't do it. And here's why. If you've discovered this space, and let's say, for instance, this space is free of all of the vampiric affiliations that have gone on with all the tubes and tendrils that are poking out of the organism. So this means religions, this means different doctrines, this means different deities, and all these kind of things. And we'll say that's over here. And let's say that there are individuals that are enveloped in that and getting sucked. And let's say you discover this space over here, okay? And then this space is free of all of that, okay? Are you going to go back over here, because this is what it would be to agree to affiliate with those who are still involved in all of that kind of stuff, the same stuff that they are trying to get free of, whether they know it or not, and then you actually get trapped and entangled in it? Or is it better for you to remain here and just keep throwing lines over there and then pulling people in rather than getting involved in it yourself? And obviously this is common sense. It's better to throw lines from over here rather than get enveloped in the same confusion that you may have emancipated yourself from somehow in hopes that you're going to be together. Because remember, we're already together. In addition to that, when you come over here, you will be right. You will come together, per se, even though we're already together. But you also have achieved in coming together back into the same foolishness that the people were in before. So that information is very specific and is for people who are having to make the decisions in their lives spiritually about whether they're going to hold ground to what we know is the truth, what we know is bringing expansion, or digress or regress for this idea that will help to bring everyone together. Because again, those kind of ideas are just that. They're ideas. They're not facts. Because the facts are we are already together. So that's what I had to say about that. So now what I want to talk about is obviously today, and I'm just going to only cover a few things because today is actually question day. That's what Clearface versus Vastface is that basically it's the point where we get on the show and then we show the different aspects of characters, because obviously everyone's going to have a different type of question. And sometimes Clearface needs to answer, sometimes Vastface needs to answer, and sometimes both. So let's just see what happens. But I did want to make sure I get through my notes. Remember that the stage that most people are in these days is likened unto the God of the Bible, who created that state of consciousness that those people remain in his image, okay? So remember that this God of the Bible says, let me create man with my image. So that was known as that being giving man his mind, or giving the humans its mind. And its mind because some who have been able to connect this into the R complex of the brain or the reptilian side of the brain, had a lot to do with fear and had a lot to do with lack of knowledge, because it even exclaimed that it was the only God, or only supreme being, and that would obviously be lack of knowledge because there are multiple supreme beings. And so there was still a statement that was made that has to be very true about what is the secret to the design of this kind of body, which is that this being said, I am the Alpha and Omega. And it's important to understand these sun god traditions, and it's because you're actually dealing with a being that is enveloped inside of a structure, whether it's the king or whether it's some eidolon named Jesus or whatever, but it's claiming that it is the chief and the ruler of the structure, okay, which is really impossible, because the stronger consciousness or the stronger mind will always win, meaning the more vaster state of consciousness will always envelop more contracted state of consciousness. Okay, so with the vast state of the universe and all of what it's capable of doing, it envelops everyone's little bitty plans. It's like, oh yeah, don't worry, we got your plan enveloped in there. It's only until you start having consciousness that's even more expanded than universes and physical worlds that you get into even being able to emancipate from these kind of realities, rather than reincarnating over and over into different realities with different geometries, more or less senses with different spatials that seem foreign and seem like they're offering a new experience when they're really inside of a giant template. So it's important to realize again that this Alpha and Omega connection, I realized, was a very big key to, again, understanding the secret to the body. And it's because we got on yesterday the last show about the even and the odd numbers, okay? And I started thinking, well, it's all fine and dandy to understand what the number 9 is about, and that should be the last number, and then 10 comes. And then you were also saying that people didn't actually use 0 before because they always started with 1. But that doesn't mean that they didn't have a concept of 10, because how could they not, seeing that they have 10 fingers? And then I said, that's very interesting. This is a back and forth reflection between, I guess, Vastface and another Vastface. So when you count the numbers on your hands, it gets you to what we call 10. So nobody has 4.5 fingers on each hand, thus giving them 9 fingers. Or actually, there are some fused limbs within some of the animals, so you may have to check there. But realistically, with human beings, we have 5 fingers. But this is interesting, or 5 fingers on each hand. But then, right then in that state of consciousness, I was immediately thrust into that, okay, your word is finger, but the real word is digit, or the digital, or digitalia, okay? And this is where the word digital comes from. And then I was like, okay, so this is obviously something deeper to read in, because I already realized that the 0s and 1s created the digital world, but it seems that the digital world is designed on touch, right? And so then I said, yeah, that's why everything has a button. That's why everything now is touchscreen. And that's why, like, if you look at the old devices, when they first start building devices, everything has a button. You got to touch the button in order to get it to operate. You see what I mean? So this was a greater level of the consciousness beginning to unfold, because I was seeing once again what we already know about the body, which is that it is designed in a dualistic fashion in nature. So it's automatically primary for you the moment that you even come into this body, meaning you wake up every day, which is a new day, a new world, that you actually become the arbitrator and step into the position of the arbitrator immediately. Let me make sure our sound's still going. So remember this, that it's important for you to see that the digital world of touch, which basically gives you most of the perception on how things feel, which is how you see the metamorphosis of thought. Like you'll see that the cycles of time have more to do with the primary sense being used during that time. And so then you get into what the tarot is really about and why the tarot is a wheel. And I'll explain this. And it's because the tarot then as a wheel is 1 to 0, alpha to omega, the beginning and the end. And in that whole drama in between there is summed up in one cable or cabal. As remember, the word cabal comes from the root to the word cable, meaning that the first letter is supposed to connect to the last. And this is why in the homeopathic chart, you see them stretch a man across the zodiac like a circle, connecting his top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Not to mention, did we not notice that the feet, which are a microcosm, and I just have to show everyone here, but the microcosm of the body is right here because, first of all, what's in here is there's a soul, as in the sole of the foot, and there's hell, or the heel, okay, which is the bottom. And then on top of that, there's this other knowledge about how this part of the body, or from the waist down, is actually a deeper part of a specific animal body, because that animal does not have an opposable thumb, meaning that on your feet you don't have hands. So it lets you also see that the body is designed in its stages of evolution. Meaning that the beginning of our evolutionary process started, as far as the body is mapping it out, from the bottom of your feet. And the reason why I was able to actually divine this, as they say, is because of the question about, do animals have chakras? And there was a question in the meeting that I was in the other day, and the question was, does animals have chakras? And immediately when I get questions these days, I go to the organism rather than thinking about it. It's more of, I just get in this time machine and I go there. And so I was inside of some larger mammal, and immediately was the cognizance that everything that has organs has chakras. Obviously, remember, organs are chakras. They play tones. And if you want to see this very simply, as we talked about, and maybe some people heard, but I talked about what your name really is. But it's basically, if you put a stethoscope to your heart, because your heart is playing the strongest frequency right now that's audible to your ear, or bass, you hear this thump, 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 and that's audible to you. But there are other frequencies that the organs are playing, and all you need is, you probably may need a far infrared microphone, but you can hear it in your ears, is what I'm saying. But also that each organ in your body is playing a specific tone, and it actually sounds like a high-pitched ring. And this is why when you go to, if you use any kind of frequency device, and there's even some that you can download for your phones, by the way, just so you can check this out for yourself. Obviously, as you raise the frequency, it goes from these tones that are very audible all the way up to these high-pitched rings, and then to a point where you can't hear it at all with your ear, but it's still playing. So this would have to bring you to the point of understanding that, excuse me, let me just catch my thoughts here, because I was thinking about frequency, and that has a tendency to do stuff to the brain, but it actually brings you to the point where you realize that if you put in your ear some type of earplugs, and you lay down in the bed, and you don't even need to make sure it's quiet, because that's what the earplugs are doing. You listen, you'll hear this ring. It's going to be as clear as day. Just listen for it. Everyone has it. What this is a collaboration of all of your organs together, playing this orchestra, in a sense, of sound. Because it's so high pitch, and this will let you also understand how much of a high frequency being that you really are. Like, even they say, oh, you're low frequency, you're on low frequency. First of all, you can't even be on low frequency and maintain one of these bodies, okay? Where you're at is in a certain part of the frequency range, but I wouldn't necessarily classify that as low frequency, even the worst of us. And this is just the truth. So where you're at and how it's really working is within this high-pitched ring and this orchestra that you're playing off, and this is really your name. And so let me bring this full circle. What you're really dealing with is with that sound, if you can do the same thing that you could do with a frequency generator, which is bring that sound down to lower octaves, it slows the sound down, and then it sounds just like an orchestra, because all the instruments that are in the orchestra are even formed, shaped, and fashioned off of the body. and how the body plays, and because the body even uses strings, the body uses cones, and this is what you see on tubas and trumpets and violins. The body is using these things to make these instruments, and this is of course a part of not the Pythagorean knowledge, but what the Pythagoreans learned and why Apollonius of Tyana became Jesus later on. And it's because they understood that with the sound and the shapes and the colors, if you can just create something, i.e. an instrument known as the organ, you could play a person. You could basically tune and shape and mold and fashion them, especially if you can get them to continuously return in a cycle to these sounds and tones and rhythms and basically become clocks themselves, ringing every Sunday, ding dong, and then becoming rhythmically in tune and biorhythmically connected to another circle, okay? And so this is the power within music. So what happens is then, just to make it very simple, and I did do a video about this on my Facebook page, but I didn't get a chance to send it to everyone on the Resistance, so there is some people who here that haven't seen it, so I will repeat it again. But it's mainly about that your name, or Amen, meaning what is hidden because it cannot be pronounced. And this is because if I hear, let's say, Beethoven's Ninth or whatever, and I don't know what the name of it is, how am I going to go to someone else, or let alone go to Google and try to find out what that is? Am I going to say, it sounds like this, dun dun dun, dun 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 dun, and then maybe someone else, the computer's definitely not going to know, right? Because there's nothing recorded like that. It sounds like dun 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 dun. Oh, here's your song. So the computer definitely doesn't know, because it only can receive data a certain way. Then a person may know if they've heard the sound before. They can say, oh, that's Beethoven's Ninth. Right? If they've heard it before. But here's an even deeper thing. If it was never named, no one would know it. I'm giving you the biggest key here. Okay? The hidden word connects to this. It's a name that can't be pronounced. And it can't be pronounced because there's a limitation. There's a limitation to how much that this voice can really put out. Now, that range is far, and we're not even using it yet. And that's why there's the throat chants. It goes all the way from down here and attempts to bring it all the way back out, probably to as high as Mariah Carey. So everything from well-seasoned llama to Mariah Carey. That would be the entire range of the voice box, which are quite expansive. You can do a lot in all those frequencies, but still realize what you're dealing with and understand what you're dealing with. That your name is not even just one of those tones and frequencies. It's them playing in this scale that will never occur again. Why? Because all of the other elements that are interacting on you are also playing their part in the symphony as they're trying to mesh in with harmony into what you're doing. And this is what we call things that we like, or people that we like, or even people that we dislike. When they get around us, we're still playing this song that's really, there's no one recording this. And that's the interesting part. So don't think that in a time that there's this, you're going to recollect all the stuff that's happened in the reality. The only one that can record that is really you. And so this is a deep thing, because it means that even in some of the ancient cultures, you can see what they were trying to do when they were trying to give themselves names like and several digits behind that in order to really describe what they were. But they still realized that probably the most that they could really get out of an explanation of who they all were, because they were into the all itself already, was a song and playing together and designing together. So I see this. I know this is true. No one can convince me that it's not the truth. So where I'm at now in a stage of my life is that I can bring that into full realization of how that would be for all of us to enjoy something like that, and how to, in a sense, bridge our world from where it is now, which is obviously not there yet, but to that destination. But this is how we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it by letting people understand more about things that are very specific to them and somewhat personal to them. And so you also have to realize that since we're all together anyway, there is really no such thing as an individual beside a person who is actually not acting like everyone else. Because a lot of people will say, well, yeah, I'm an individual. I got my individual character. But the reality is that only thing that they're doing is emulating or acting like other roles and things in the reality, in the game, things that have already been tested and tried. To truly be individual, you would have to get to a point of being able to comprehend a more vast state of consciousness beyond division, this means that you would have to become Clearface. You would have to run the entire circle of yourself. You would have to act out every single thing that you ever thought you wanted to do in order not to deal with thought anymore, or Thoth, or the being of the moon under dominion. Always thinking, not experiencing. It's two different things. Thoth built a world of an illusion. Books and all these different things that explain stuff that you're supposed to be doing. But yet, in this world, science and the writings and readings of it, encyclopedias, seem to suffice to the actual experiment or experience of interacting with it in itself, meaning that somehow writing about jumping out of the plane suffices enough than jumping out of the plane. And that people have now taken that illusionary data and imagined somehow that it's the same thing, and it's not. And anyone that jumped out of a plane before can tell you. So that's where we're also at now, really, with the network, is we want to get people into more of the experience about what spirituality and even beyond spirituality really is. And we want to start the actual process of making that possible. But we have to be serious, because a lot of people, they want to interact with the network, and I'll explain this very seriously. But a lot of people want to interact with the network, but they don't know what to do. They haven't actually balanced themselves. They still haven't got a full, clear idea of what's going on, even though it's transmitted every day, because they're not actually applying it and experiencing it. And a big part of this is the leap. The leap is when you don't necessarily need anyone around you to tell you that, yeah, go ahead and do it, or you got this support system of people that are in this other place, and so that's why you're going to go there. It doesn't need any of that when you get into a certain state of consciousness of being able to fully sustain yourself. And what we're looking for, and because that's also what we want to become, is sustainable individuals. Whether it's mentally, spiritually, physically, in your consciousness, you have already achieved a complete system of yourself, meaning that what you experience from there is only greatness. And trust me, all of us are at a point of getting to this. We're describing it, is what I'm saying, as we're going to it. But now people have to understand the difference between the description and actually being involved in it. So that's what I want to convey today, and I'm sure that we'll do that somehow in the conversation. So moving on, you also have to realize that with all of these hive mind frequencies, and as I explained, that when you go into your next stage of consciousness, your senses, as you call them, actually begin to collapse. So the first ones that collapse are sight and sound. So at that point, you can hear see. And when you can hear see, everything appears like a tube, because anything that's making a sound or a wave actually has a tube or a tentacle. And so when you start hear seeing, you see all these tubes and tentacles, and they on the tips are like light. And so on a slow down spectrum, this appears like a star. But in the fast spectrum, it actually looks like a tube of light. Okay? So with these tubes of light everywhere, these are the affiliations. These are the things that you choose to plug into your organisms or your organs. Okay? So when you do that, you have to realize that there's a certain point where you may get an improper balance going on, because all these tubes that you're connecting to are also connected to other tubes and hives in different stages of consciousness, some defunct and some sustaining, because they're all on different parts of time. So what I'm saying is that this is why the cord cutting technique was so effective for multiple things. First of all, because we're still always going to be together, but there is definitely some affiliations that people have gotten involved in and people have with one another, that they need to understand how much space they need to give that for it to grow. And this is the other thing, is that I started realizing that when there becomes a negative experience between you and another individual, it is important to give them space, because you'll always be connected. I mean, that's what we obviously know to be the truth. But what happens is the space gives them opportunity to grow, and it also gives you opportunity to grow. So start to visualize these techniques of what is actually taking place, and in that you'll actually get more clearance, even beyond the act, meaning that you won't even actually find yourself having to, at times, if you understand how to project sound enough and balanced enough, you won't find yourself even having to go and explain to the individual. It'll just all start happening and taking place as you remain Clearface, with an option for Vastface. Because I'm not saying that any of these characters are positive and negative. I'm just saying you have to know which one to use at a specific period of time, because you are the arbitrator. So understanding these stagnant affiliations get you into realizing that once you do your rebirth process, and this generally happens with awakening, right? And you can always see what happens in awakening. I'll explain it very simple, and we'll make it all complex. When the person begins to awaken, and they say it's likened unto trying to rouse someone while they're asleep, okay? And so as you start to awaken, your vibrational frequency starts to do like this, okay? And then at a certain point, it starts to go so fast, it cracks. Like a chrysalis, like a shell around a butterfly. And then you emerge as this new form, right? But this new form is still in the same world. And this is how you have to realize there are very advanced beings here, even that used to be human or even more than human, whatever you want to call them, because there's an opportunity for everyone to advance. Just because you may be having trouble with it doesn't mean that the next being did. But in the advanced state of consciousness, you crack out of very dense shells. But you still remain here because here is everywhere. There's a quirk, a portal right here, even on top of my nose that I could go through if I was small enough. So the reality is this. When we start to look into, when we start to look into these agreements, okay, and this breaking the shell, okay. So when we break the shell, we come out as this new form, right? But you're still in the same world. So when you walk into the next room with the same old shells in there, the shades, actually the word was excrement. I mean, everyone is still in their fertilization stage in delta and sleep, right? So when you walk out of the room, you're this huge, bright, radiant light, and then you come in there, and then there's all these shells laying there. The shells are still in their state of consciousness. They haven't had the same vibratory awakening that you've had. So if you're not aware completely of what's going on, especially with your spiritual awakening, a descent begins to take place because you can tie yourself to those shells again and actually get yourself pulled back down on the same frequency. Or what starts to happen is there becomes these disagreements, non-matching of the frequency, where you start seeing certain things in individuals, especially with your new sight, and you start realizing this is the whole part of the issue. And then generally what happens is you get away, right? And those who went on major spiritual experiences know everything about this. Sometimes they call it the dark night of the soul, but it lasts more than a night. If you like the dark year of the soul, it's like there's no friends around. It seems like you are inside of some cloak where nobody else can even see you. You walk in the store and folks are not even noticing your signature. And it's because you're on this other frequency. And when you're on another frequency, you're actually invisible to others that cannot be harmonic with that frequency. Just as sure as something like this is probably invisible to a character that has a very malevolent stage of consciousness, meaning that they're not even going to be able to mesh with this too well. Okay, so realize what's going on then is that when you come out and now you're this new life form, you're making your transformation, you're going across the bridge. You have to give yourself time because you're going through the buffer or the spaces that actually separate the different stages of consciousness, i.e. the walls. You're now passing through the wall because you've become invisible. And now you're going to go on to this other side. But that space in between getting there, because remember, as you're going through your state of consciousness, space equals time. So as you're actually getting there, you're in this field where there's really nothing going on. People are flying right by you, meaning people are coming in and out of your life. And then you're even starting to question yourself. And you're even starting to question going back to the island that you just came from. But as you press on, you start seeing that there's a new vista. And there's even others that are already there. And then you completely land on that. And then that becomes your new state of consciousness. And then you start becoming harmonic with the individuals that are in that new state of consciousness. And what I'm explaining to you again is, and I'm looking over here because my notes are here. What I'm explaining to you is the exact process of coming into a new stage of consciousness. So then guess what? Now, when you enter into this new state of consciousness, this new dimension, in a sense, you now have to go through customs, meaning that there is now a new way that you have to really be able to conduct your organism. This may mean that now you're a vegetarian. This may mean now you don't go to clubs. This may mean now you see when you skydive. This may mean now different contingencies which become the custom of you being able to remain in that frequency. So what happens is that now all of these new things that you're loading, and we're not saying there's anything right or wrong with this. I'm just explaining the entire process. For an individual who is tired of being held back and does not want to be held back, you have to be very selective then at the new affiliations that you make, because guess what? all of these dimensions, if you really understand what they are really all the same. And that's why everything is here all right now. So the same kind of energy that would have that made you remain stagnant in that previous frequency will also be present in that other frequency, but just in a different form. And this is why Clearface knows how to collapse it all and make it all merge together. You see what I mean? I call it, it knows how to eat it so it can get to the 9, and then it can get to the realization of what the 10 is, which is the alpha and omega. As it's pulling out, it's like it's coming out of a donut so long, because every single portal, as you see, is like, this is like a portal, okay? And imagine this, and there's just this hole, and there's a wall here. But then I'm on the other side, okay? So this is a portal to me. So if you imagine how the other worlds are, is that right here, they're going to open up a hole, okay? And then through this hole, you can see into the other world, okay? And it's because that the world is on the other side of the hole. It's on the other side of the 0, okay? And so if you dive into the hole, it's like going into a tube, and this is time traveling. And then the light from that hole is the collective frequency of everyone that is inside of there. And so it gives off a certain kind of radiance. And then if you become attracted to it, you can jump into it. And we're doing this every time we go to sleep at night. I come to tell everyone that actually how this entire thing is designed is that every single day is really a new world. The sun goes really through its birth, its sustainability, and its death every day. In this period that we call 24 hours, it goes through that entire process. It goes through its regenerative cycle. And this is because if you really understand what the power of nature is, geomancy and these kind of things, you realize that everything is constructed based on the energies that are present during certain times, okay? And so during the early in the morning, around 4 or 5 o'clock, and this is where for those who are very pranic, they feel this tingling and they often get more lucid, okay? And this is because that first part is the most brightest, most regenerative, most intense positive side of the sun. So that actual energy that's coming out right at that point can be used and harnessed in order to regenerate. While right around the time in the sun set, it's a vacuum. So during that time, it's also very easy to get out of the body because you can get sucked right out of the body if you understand how to do that process, right? And then there's even this point in the morning, somehow earlier in the morning, somewhere around 2 o'clock, where there's a bridge anyway because the two worlds are betwixt, meaning that night and day are actually even. And this is a very interesting thing because it's caught up in a lot of mysticism, but it's 100% true that at a certain point, the watchers of the night and the watchers of the day have to meet. And all this is going on inside of you. These are not external characters. This is you. So this is like at a certain time in the morning, your nighttime side and your daytime side are actually together. And this is why it becomes the most important time to really get the arbitration and the mediation going on with yourself. Like I like to generally, I like to wake myself up at around 4:30, 5 o'clock, but then just lay there without opening the eyes. Do not open the eyes because that's when the program begins to load. That's when the lasers start to cut the reality around you. So do not open the eyes, but remain there in your state of consciousness and then see how that space is before you open your eyes. And then comment later on about how that space is totally different and more things can be recalled. But instead of trying to remember, because then you go backwards and what you just saw is really forwards, only look into what it is that you're going to engage in that day and the details of that. These are techniques that I use in order to keep balance going on and keep purpose going on. So as we, let's talk about this a little bit more. I'm going to get to again, we're going to be taking calls today. I didn't turn things on for those who are trying to call in and they're not getting answered. I didn't turn things on yet because it would come up on the screen and it would get crazy and I wouldn't even see my notes. So I want you also to understand that the fertility is important for your ideas because as a good friend of mine, me and Jason were talking this Sunday, I believe, actually, excuse me, maybe this Friday. And what we were talking about is we were talking about different things that led me to certain conclusions. And one of these conclusions were about the development of the fleshly vessels, or what we're seeing as flesh now, but originally was some type of liquid material, i.e. the womb, okay? And that this material, because there's water and amniotic fluid in the womb, but this kind of water and this kind of material attracts light. That all light really wants to do when it's in a certain stage, especially when it's young, is it just wants to penetrate into water or something that's cold that can cool it down, so that steam can then develop, and then the actual next part of its process can begin to take place, because light alone by itself cannot operate without the darkness. So if you want to understand these energies and these powers, just understand them from their state of consciousness, not so much as trying to put a being around them like a light bearer and all these kind of weird things. All you have to do is say, well, light, when it's running around and it's darting everywhere, it's so excited that it's only looking for something that it can plunge into and that can envelop it. Okay? And then when it plunges in and it's enveloped, it only then can gamble, because it's moving so fast, that is going to sustain it enough to begin to its next metamorphosis process. And this is why the creation of life is still very fragile with what beings can mate with other beings. Human beings obviously cannot put their semen into other entities and expect to create the full cycle of life. There may be distortions created, incubuses and succubus created even, but as far as bringing it through the complete cycle or the complete cable in order to bring it into this world in particular, it just won't happen. So we can see that as then that there is a specific and very sensitive side to exactly what kind of seed can go into what kind of soil and make it in through its full metamorphosis process. So always realize that sometimes Earth may seem so complex because this is the kind of complex mineral base that you need to get you to the next stage of your consciousness and growth. But also in realizing this, and then when you start seeing it as a macro, you start to see that, well, wait a minute then. This means that it holds true that if I go into a reality or I go into an environment that is very abundant and very fertile, and this was in nature synonymous with frogs, rabbits, fish, because there's a lot of mating going on, because this energy that is being put together even by these animals is creating this pranic field that actually attracts light. It's the same principles. So what happens is when you have these kind of objects around in abundance, trees and these kind of things, then your ideas or your lights transmissions that you're sending from you are able to go right into these wombs and become enveloped and start to develop. So this is why, if you want to make it very simple, they're able to say that, oh, if you just change your environment and you go to a place that's more conductive towards what you're trying to do, then you'll succeed. Or even deeper than that in the laboratories, when they understood that DNA is most affected by the reality. But this also means that, remember, there's a part of this, because we're always together, but there's a part of this that you're going to have to do as, i.e., the individual, meaning the person that actually makes the action to bring about the response. And what generally happens, as I said, for those who are beginning that crossover into another frequency, is they leave the island and they leave alone. They pack their stuff up. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. Generally, they get out of here. I don't want to. We're tired of you. You're talking to us about that crazy stuff. So you're on your way. And so realize that that trip, though, is one that you carry out on a physical level alone, but that is synonymous, because the world is upside down, indeed backwards, with you actually going with everyone, the true everyone, the breath, the water, those kind of things that have been sustaining you. And so because there are less distractions of all these other external entities around you, hammers and pentagrams and all this hanging around, then you're actually able to see more clearly to where sustaining or the sustaining ability is really and truly coming from. You actually start to pay attention more to the ground that is beneath your feet, because you're not locking eyes with someone who is basically on that state of consciousness where their eyes are. So let me finish what I was talking about this, the body being the stages of evolution. And it's because I started realizing that, again, most of the organs are encased within this area, and that those organs are synonymous with the animal bodies or the hives that hold up that frequency, whether you want to or not, meaning that reincarnation is about a collective frequency that contains all the information that was ever put into that particular biorhythm. So from that point, when you leave this body, all the information is not in this body. It's in a frequency that is connected to the organs of the next body that you will inhabit. And all the bodies that have those frequencies or organs are all tied in together, and that is the archon, meaning that is the actual physical forms of the slower down vibrational frequency of the what do you call them, Anunnaki gods, whatever you want to call them. And see, and you can understand this because they have remained at one frequency, and this is what I was explaining before about not getting stuck on the ladder. If you're 123 hertz, you're still 123 hertz, not an entire harmonic. So if you choose to just create a world that consists of only 123 hertz, then you will make up only a piece of a much more grander world where a being can encompass not only 123 hertz, but even beyond all light, sound, and different things on the spectrum. As I said before, the greatest mind wins in every tense. And I just wanted to explain it like that because if your ideas are encased inside of somebody else's ideas, you must go bigger. You must go broader. You must challenge the mind to become more vast so that you can reach clear. And so that's the process. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. But just realize that you will now then be perfecting the jewels. And I'll tell you, if you go anywhere, you can have 1,000 or 5,000, 10,000 crushed up diamonds. And diamonds with cracks and holes and things in them. And it is not worth as much as one perfected diamond. So realize that in this world that there's this Googleplex going on, meaning this complex of more. Oh, I'm going to get more, I'm going to get more, get more. 2,000, 2 billion, I'm about to get $2 billion, $3 billion. You see, so it's more. Weaker. Divide. And that somehow has been, through a mind trick and through illusion, made to be seen as that it is more powerful to have more in division. Right? But that's not the case. It is more powerful when it is not in division. So that one diamond, when you're perfecting your jewels, don't be too disturbed about all the stuff going on around you where others seem to be collecting and amassing a large amount of something, whatever it may be. Because remember, if you just have one of that and that is perfected, then it is worth more than 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 imperfected. So with your chakras then, it is great to work in with one of those chakras that you know, i.e. your strong point due to your zodiacal positions, etc., which is something you got to look into. Don't call me about it. I'm not a fortune teller or astrologer, but you can tell this intuitively through your mind. I call it astral dynamics or celestial mechanics. You can actually see where your impediments are. And then so when you perfect that one chakra, it's like you in that garage. And you're just working on this thing, and then finally it kicks off. And then once you kick that one off, not only do you not have some energy and power and success of the activation of the one chakra, you also have an idea of what it would take to unlock and to fix the adjacent chakras. Okay, so this is again coming back out of this lowered state of consciousness, lower vibrational frequency, i.e. broke or pope. Okay, all that whole lowered state of consciousness that exists when the wheels are not working, so they're broke, so there's no current. When there's no current, then there's no currency. This is all intertwined with itself, because this is how matrices work. So this idea of even money or currency does not end here. As long as there is a physical world or worlds that are operating on the mechanics of physical world, there is a synonymous with money. And so if you look in the galaxies and understand, well, what is money in the galaxy? Prana, Kundalini, the spice. That is the currency there. That is what is going to propel you. Because anyone who has a ship can communicate. And that is the core to everything, communication. So as long as you have a ship to communicate and you have fuel, there will be no endless to your galactic quest. Remember that. So also, that's it. I'm going to take a brief break here for a moment, and I'm going to refresh myself. And then when we come forward, we're going to take some calls. And from that point, we're going to just get into answering everyone's questions. Look here and get a whole video going on or something just for everyone. And it's obviously an amazing time. There's a lot of information that's transmitted. And this is some stuff that I'm really going to start these days, because I believe there's so much in these messages, keeping it a little bit shorter than normal, or how we normally do it, in order for more of a maximum effect of individuals getting the message and actually understanding what the message is really about within. Because there's nothing outside. It's all inside first. And then once you discover it there, then you have the opportunity to expand wherever you want. And so let's go ahead and take a brief moment. And then, as I said, I'm going to come forward and we're going to start taking calls.